And I'd just like to welcome you all to our Griffins at Home series. We have Dr. Matthew Friedman, who's a 2020 graduate of GMercyU University. Dr. Friedman's going to lead us in a discussion on what it takes for students to face challenges and digital dilemmas in today's society, and giving them the skills they need to succeed as digital learners and to be leaders and citizens of tomorrow. And then we'll also find some tools to help parents promote internet safety at home and at school. And so also I just wanted to introduce Dr. Freeman. He's a member of the faculty at the graduate school at Point Park University, where he's been since January of 2015. He's had a 22-year career in K through 12 public education, holding various positions throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, including high school social studies teacher, middle school assistant principal, assistant to the superintendent, in several areas, and then also as Chief Academic Officer in Downingtown. So thank you, Dr. Friedman, for joining with us, and please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. How are you? We were just laughing. If you're wondering, this is not a background. This is I'm actually in the car, not driving, but my father-in-law is actually at the hospital, so I had to drive my wife to the hospital, so she's going to be in there for a while, and I'm sitting in the car. But it's 2020, which honestly, if we had this conversation in 2019, you'd think, the heck's he doing in the car? But in 2020, you're like, it's the way it is. It's the way it is. So just want to welcome those of you that could make it, and we're going to have a nice discussion tonight. We'll keep it lighthearted, and I really want to make this an open forum for discussion. And I want to share my screen with all of you, hopefully. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
In the meantime, I'll just let you all know that we are recording this session, and it will be posted to our Griffins at Home website. So if you'd like to circle back around, we will have that posted there, and you can rewatch or send it to any friends. Please feel free to do that.
Okay, we got it now. Okay, can you guys all see the screen? Perfect. So the topic for tonight's long title, but I will definitely simplify it. Digital dilemmas and skills needed to succeed for digital learners in today's society. So in a nutshell, this is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. As was mentioned, I'll give you a brief background when we get into the slides here, but I've been in public education my whole career. I come from a family of educators. My dad was a high school teacher for 46 years. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, so they couldn't have been more opposite ends of the spectrum, to be honest with you. But, today, my dad and my mom, I mean, they're both long retired. My dad's been deceased for a while, but, I don't think they could have handled teaching in today's workplace with the online demands and the blended and hybrid settings. But it's different. In March, we hit this wall where we had to all go virtual, and then we needed to quickly figure out what we needed to do as educators. And not only were districts focused on what we were going to do as educators, but we needed to focus on what skills students needed at home, what skills parents quickly needed because they soon became the educators at home. And so we needed to make that quick adjustment and that paradigm shift to the digital world. So there's a lot of dilemmas that can go on, not only as a teacher, not only as a student, but as a parent as well. And we talked, for years, if you've been a parent that has had multiple students go through a school system, if you've lived through the transition of technology being truly integrated as a teaching and learning tool into the workplace or into the school setting, we often talk about what are the dilemmas that are we're facing as not only students but parents and as educators as well. We talk about things, and we'll talk tonight about things like screen time and something that we call digital citizenship, what is best in an online setting. We'll talk about synchronous and asynchronous settings. And so how do we maximize the learning space in an online setting, and how do we make sure students are learning in an online setting? How do we make sure that students and adults are not sitting in front of screens all day, and how do we get them actively engaged? And so there's a lot of different avenues we'll talk about tonight. And really what interested me, and I feel honored and blessed that I could pay my knowledge and experience forward with fellow GMercyU alumni and parents and current students. How do we tackle all these things? And one thing that I didn't mention in my bio, I do a lot of consulting on a national level. So I get to work with school districts all across the country. And what I quickly learned as I started consulting over the years is that truly the names and faces change. We all face the same dilemmas no matter where we are, no matter how big the school district is, how small the school district is, whether it's suburban or urban or rural. It doesn't matter. We all face the same kind of dilemmas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want what's best for students, but we have to realize, and this is an overused term, we're living in a new normal. But what's that normal look like, and what do we have to do in this setting? Because the one thing that we all agree upon is that students need to continue to be educated. We need to continue to learn on a daily basis, but we need to figure out what are the best ways that we can do that? What are the best ways we can support as educators? But most of all, what are the best ways we can support as parents and guardians? So we'll talk about that. I always like to lead with a quote here. I'm here because I'm passionate about rethinking education for all learners. So we need to think about, what does education look like moving forward? And we're going to talk about, because technology has such a big presence in that, we need to figure out how we can best use technology. And there are lots of organizations, and I'm going to highlight one organization tonight moving forward that you can use as an educator, as a parent, and students can use as well. That is a tremendous organization that is going to help you with a lot of these questions. So here's my contact information. I know this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch this, but please, if you have a question, feel free to contact me in any of those mediums. I'm active on social media, mostly on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm not a Facebook person, so contact me there. If you're not on Twitter, Twitter is a great tool to find lots of information about lots of different topics in a educational way. So the agenda tonight is simple. We're going to talk about three things. We're going to share the latest research on screen time and mental health of adolescents. And I was really thinking about what I wanted to hone in on in a 45-minute to hour presentation. So one of the things that really keeps coming to the forefront is screen time and mental health of adolescents. And I'm experiencing, I have 3 children at home, 9, 7, and 3. And my 9-year-old and 7-year-old are in 4th grade and 2nd grade, and they love going to school. And stopping going to school in March and going online, I saw firsthand the mental health struggles. They were struggling with not seeing their teacher, not seeing their friends, not engaging with people their own age on a daily basis, and being at home. As much as they loved being at home with each other and with their parents and family, it's difficult to make that switch, especially when you love going to school. And the reality is that sometimes school is the best place for students. That's their safe haven, and they like being at school. And so when you don't go to an online setting, how do you make that transition and see people in a virtual setting like we are tonight? So we're going to talk about that. Second thing we're going to talk about, we're going to explore resources to share with families to find high quality media, meaning that if we are at home and you need to continue to learn at home, what types of things are best for you or your students, your children to use at home. There's so many things, and so many things are coming out of the woodwork now because people are jumping at the chance to provide online resources. But which ones are the best? Which ones are the safest? Which ones are age appropriate? Which ones really have meaning for the learning experience? And we'll talk about those. And we're going to explore various resources to help facilitate family communication for not only this upcoming school year, but beyond, and how families can use online resources to collaborate and to really move the educational process forward. So I figured those are three very important buckets to talk about, and we'll talk about those in more detail as we go on. So as the home becomes a place for school, the home-school connection has never been more essential. We often, if you're watching this as a parent, and there's really not that many of you, so I'd really like to ask you here, and you don't have to introduce yourself, and you can use the chat feature, but how many of you have children in school that are watching this tonight? I'll give you a minute to. Okay, we have a second grader, we have a high school junior. Anyone else? Okay, kindergartner and another second grader. Okay, no children. So from this, from your children being home in March, I'm assuming that all of you were probably home for, a certain amount of time, and you still might be home. You might be working from home or working in a hybrid setting. You might be going in a little bit. Did you find challenges as a parent helping to support your children? And did your children find the transition difficult? And you can share verbally as well. I mean, you don't have to use the chat feature, but I'd love to hear from you.
My son had a little difficulty with the timing. Like, he thought it was kind of party time, stay up late. I'm the high school junior. I'm the one who.
Okay.
So he kind of quickly had to adjust to the fact that 8 o'clock rolls around pretty quickly, and that you need to be logged in and everything. So that was a little tough.
Yep. Now, were you home?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were home from work.
And so is my husband. We're all here.
So it's a transition. It really is. And especially even if you are an educator, and, like I've been a lifelong educator, it was tough for me to put myself back in that role and to kind of oversee my own children. So, like I understand basic structure of the expectations of what needs done, but it's kind of difficult to put yourself back in that role, because they, at least my children, they look at me as dad. They don't look at me as the teacher or the principal, and providing the structure. And they had a tough time adjusting to that space. So does anyone else want to add?
We have the same problem here. I'm more of the mother, not the teacher, and to be the teacher is very difficult. It's as though nobody really wants to listen, right? Because I'm not the real teacher.
You're not trained to be an educator,
And I have no idea what I'm doing.
I don't either.
But you have to realize that there's really three areas that take place here. So there's in-person, obviously, in-person learning, and that's traditionally of where kids are going to school. There's hybrid, which we were talking about before we started this evening, where a lot of districts are moving to the hybrid setting where students are going maybe a couple days a week, and then there's still distance learning. And you have to realize that the connection, as I say, is essential, because with in-person, most schools and districts, reach out to parents for support, whether it's through the PTA, Parent Teacher Association, whether it's through, making the connections from the individual teachers and connecting with the parents and guardians. So we've always valued the connection with home. But as you move into a hybrid or distance learning setting, think about what we just talked about here. The district is relying heavily on you to not only support your children at home in a learning environment, but to make sure that they're using the technology in a meaningful way. So you're wearing a million different hats here, and you might not be experienced in any of them. So you need to figure out as an adult what the best resources and what the best ways are to support your children, to provide them quality and safe resources as a parent to be successful. Because there's no doubt in my mind that from March up until now, there has been, some sort of, educational slip, as a lot of educators call it. There's this gap in learning because really from March until June, a lot of districts were kind of trying out different things and there wasn't any formalized training. We kind of knew this was coming very quickly and we kind of jumped into things. So we faced a major dilemma of what resources, online resources to use, how we wanted to teach, whether synchronously or asynchronously. And if like to your point with the high school junior, in an asynchronous setting, if you don't have to log in at a certain time every day and you can just do your work when you want, sometimes that free reign, it can be good and can be bad. If you don't have a structured child or you're not able to commit a lot of time as a parent, if you're busy with work or you still had to go to work and you didn't understand how to really navigate the structure of school, then you could have students doing work at any time of the day and things really can get out of whack pretty quickly. So we need to collectively understand these different settings here. So let me move forward here.
We did have a couple of messages in the chat box too,
Oh.
Matt, and it's just one participant said that they do not have children but work with children K
Yes,
through 6
I
who are
got
hybrid or distance.
I got that.
And then in the second one, work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And with an only child, it's hard for him to be alone.
Yes. And that goes back to the mental health thing that we're going to talk about, the isolation. Even though we're connecting right now and we're having a conversation, there's a lot to be said about being face-to-face and being collegial and being with people your own age and connecting with them in a physical setting. So, one of the things that I can tell you from a personal standpoint that we've always, wanted our students, my children, to try different things, whether it's they've been involved with dance and athletics and different organizations. And as soon as those things started opening up again, we really made it a priority to get them involved as much as possible. And it's helped them so much to get involved with extracurriculars. And so if you have the ability to get them, to get your children involved outside the house, especially when they're home, they're alone and they feel alone, to get them in extracurriculars outside of the house is so, we found it so important. And it's something that's necessary. This is, there's something going around now called Zoom fatigue. You don't have to be an educator to experience Zoom fatigue, because if I would have asked you last year at this time how many Zoom meetings you had, you could probably count on one hand the amount of Zoom meetings you had. Now, if I ask you how many Zoom meetings you had, you might have 2 handfuls a day. And so it's just, it's different. And different's not bad, but different is different. So I'm not going to read everything here, but I just have this slide. Who can imagine back to school would look like this in 2020? No one could have imagined this. And teachers have been asked to radically change their practice. And so families have been challenged with this new student experience. And this is what we're going to continue to talk about this evening. So the big question is, what are some challenges families are seeing with distance learning? And we kind of answered those, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on those. And I usually will ask people to put this in the chat feature and we'll talk about it. But we kind of started to talk about this here where we're, figuring out what are the challenges families are facing in this setting. So one of the things, and one of the biggest things, is mental fatigue. And the mental fatigue piece really focuses on the social emotional stresses that interrupt learning. Now, the social emotional and the mental fatigue not only is a factor for students, but it's a factor for parents and adults in general. So the ongoing stress of not having structure can be very taxing on a lot of people. So figuring out the what we've titled the digital dilemmas of how to use technology in a meaningful way to get over that mental fatigue and the social emotional stress is extremely important. So impact of learning during a pandemic. Digital media and technology can and should be a social safety net right now. It can be used in a social way. So one of the things that I saw, and I always like to give the personal spin on things, my 9-year-old and 7-year-old daughter, something so neat that I had never seen pre-pandemic. When we were really in lockdown, they were having Zoom calls and FaceTime calls with the neighbors and with their friends from school, and they were playing games over FaceTime. They were playing Barbies. I mean, it was just like things, they were reading chapters of books to each other. So they really used it as that social safety net. There were, conflict over screens is common in families. Some families only might have one computer. They don't have the luxury of having multiple iPads or multiple computers, and you need to really fight for that time. So it's kind of creating a schedule and a balance of when people can use it during the day or in the evening. And so you need to balance that out as a parent. And then adolescents, as I have here, are increasingly going online to seek information and support related to mental health. I mean, the research shows right now that searches for mental health and coping and social emotional is at an all-time high. And we need to be equipped as parents and as adults, whether you have children or you don't have children, whether you're in education or you're not in education, how do we deal with these things? And so this has been a trying time for us all. So the one thing you have to realize, it's not about screen time. And we hear so much about screen time. Screen time's not good for children. Screen time's not good for adults. But it's not so much about screen time. If you look at the research, it's about how you're using technology. So whether you're a child, whether you're an adolescent, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, it's not so much about how you're using. It's about how you're using the technology. It's not so much about screen time. I can tell you sometimes I'll get caught up in my work as a district administrator, and there are days that I can't escape my office and I hate it, and I'm in front of the computer a lot of the, all day, and I'm doing busy work in front of the computer. And before the pandemic I wasn't having a lot of online meetings, but I can tell you now, when I have screen time that's excessive, maybe 6 or 7 hours throughout the day, and I'm engaged in different meetings and I'm doing different things, it's not as taxing as it was just sending emails or writing responses to things all day. So it's really looking at those creative opportunities. It's looking at the higher level learning. It's looking at ways that we can engage students throughout the day. And if they're engaged, and we'll talk about engagement in a few minutes, the screen time isn't as big a factor. I'm not saying that you should just kind of take off the handcuffs and let your children or you in particular be on technology all day. That's not healthy. But don't focus so much, especially during these times, on screen time. Focus on how you're actually using the technology. So the company and the organization, it's not a company, it's an organization that I want to focus on this evening, that I've done tons of work for and with throughout the years, is Common Sense Media. I'm going to make the assumption, you don't have to answer this in the chat, all of you have probably used or continue to use, and probably at an all-time high, have used Netflix. So Netflix has been, think about the days that you watched TV shows growing up. If you wanted to watch a TV show, what did you have to do? You had to plan your life around watching that TV show. If you knew a show was coming on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, well, if you weren't in front of the TV at Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, guess what? You missed the show. But today, we live in a Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu world. And it's customizable, and that's the beauty of it. But if you've ever been on Netflix and you're looking for content on Netflix to watch, did you ever see the symbol next to where it says Common Sense Media, the check mark? Did you ever see that when you're looking at an overview of what a show is or a movie is? So next time you go on Netflix, look for this green circle with a check mark. Common Sense Media, they have a nationally accredited rubric, and they rate programming on their website, and they've partnered with Netflix, but you don't have to go on Netflix. You can go right on Common Sense Media, and they have recommendations for for all ages, for families, for everything from movies and TV to books to apps and games to parents, what they need to know, to Latino to research. So all across the board, you can see here, and I did a screenshot, they rate the different types of content that are out there and what's appropriate and not appropriate for different age groups. And it is amazing. And when you go on Common Sense Media and you look at the different types of content, you can do everything from, like I said, apps and books to streaming to TV to movies, and you can use that content as supplemental resources for learning throughout the day. So if your student is still at home, or even if they're in a hybrid setting, chances are there's not going to be a lot of synchronous live interaction throughout the day. It's probably, I would have to guess, a lot of asynchronous opportunities. Well, with those asynchronous opportunities, you as the adult at home need to figure out, well, what are some meaningful ways we can use technology, whether it's quote unquote during the school day or after hours, from 4 o'clock on. Using something like Common Sense Media is incredible. And I'll get to another tool that they've created that if you haven't seen it, it's going to open up a whole new world for you. But Common Sense Media is a great example of a tool that you really need to check out, and it's going to help you out exponentially. So I want to do a little activity with you for a few minutes. If you're in front of a computer, which all of you are, if you log into and go to Google and go to Common Sense Media, and I'm going to mix this up a little bit. Normally what I have people do is go into the chat feature in Zoom and write down your favorite TV show or something. And then, but for time purposes, what I want you to do is open up a new tab if you have a second, go to commonsensemedia.org, and then go search for the title in the search box, and then look at the review real fast. So tell me quickly, and you can tell me verbally or you can put it in the chat, has anyone ever gone on Common Sense Media before or heard of Common Sense Media? That's awesome. That's the answer that I want to hear, because even if you have heard of it, this is still a good thing. But if you haven't heard of it, this is going to open up a whole new world for you. As a parent, whether you have children, you don't have children, you work with children, this is going to help you vet resources like you've never seen before. And it's amazing. And trust me, this is all research-based. So this is not just people sitting around just giving their opinions. This is all research-based. And honestly, if there's anything as close to foolproof as you can get, Common Sense Media is truly where it's at. So this isn't a commercial for them. This is just a organization that I've gravitated to over the years, and this really ties in to when I talk about this topic, how important this is. So let me ask you something. How might you use this activity with your children when you are able to go in and vet? You know, what are some ways, if you clicked on a new tab and you went into Common Sense Media like I asked, and you quickly started to read the review, you know, what are ways that you think, you know, as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, as someone that works with children, how do you think you can use a tool like this? Or what ways would you want to use a tool like this?
For me, it would be Xbox games.
Yeah, perfect.
I just looked one up.
Perfect. Tremendous. Tremendous. And you know what? Your kids are going to hate me because I'm opening up a whole new world for you.
Just the appropriateness too, I think. Yep. I'm sorry about the background noise.
Yep.
I just looked up Minecraft. Yes.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So seriously, yeah, listen, you will thank me and not thank me because you'll go down a rabbit hole here. You'll start looking up all kinds of things, but you will really help yourself. You'll have a tool belt of different apps and games and books and TV shows that are appropriate, things that you might not have ever heard of before, that it will kind of guide you on different directions on where to go. And it will fill in the gaps that you might have had as you know, someone that either works with children or has children. So it's really amazing. But let me go on here.
I like the boxes that say parents say, and then also kids say. What is it, like, what ages are appropriate? It's kind of fascinating. So thank you.
It's unbelievable. And so it ranks things, and you can go, trust me, you will bookmark this, you will favorite this. And if you're anything like me or any of the people that I've worked with, what I usually do with educators, I get them something, I get them a certification through Common Sense Media called a digital citizenship badge. So digital citizenship basically is understanding how to use technology in a meaningful and safe way in and outside the classroom. So they, you know, educators will teach lessons inside the classroom on how to use technology in a meaningful and safe way. We talk about things like digital footprints, and we're all guilty as adults. But, you know, I laugh and I don't laugh when people post pictures that are inappropriate and they think that if they erase them, they're gone forever. Well, once you post something, it's out there. And so your digital footprint, I mean, if I can't tell you how many companies and even school districts, you know, one of the first things they do in an interview, they'll Google you and they'll ask you. I mean, people have asked me, hey, over the years, you know, if I Google your name, what am I going to find? You know, tell us now. I'm like, you know, thankfully nothing, but it's amazing that is common practice today, that they look to see your digital footprint, and it's something that we need to be mindful of. So I want to kind of pivot here from device use to engagement. And here's some things that you should know. And I'm going to go over these pretty quickly because I'm going to leave you with a bunch of resources here. So, you know, we talk about how your children are learning, and I mentioned several ways, and I just kind of want to give you an overview, and you'll be able to go back and look at this as a resource. But synchronous, just so we're all using the same terminology, synchronous is live. Synchronous is when a student is with a teacher. So, you know, we had one of the parents say their child gets up and 8 o'clock comes awful fast. But if you're not on at 8, the teacher's on at 8, the class is on at 8, and you're live. So a synchronous setting is healthy. This is a synchronous setting. People that watch the replay of this, you know, the recording, that's asynchronous. So they can listen to all of us, but it's asynchronous. So there's pros and cons to both. The synchronous is that we can have a conversation and go back and forth and you can ask questions. In the asynchronous, they can watch it and they can glean what they need to, but the advantage is that they can rewind and hear something as many times as they want. So I gave some examples here of this synchronous setting. Asynchronous, like I said, a little bit different, pre-recorded, but we also live in a very asynchronous world. I mentioned things like Netflix and Hulu and Prime and all that, but there's a lot of educational tools out there that obviously are asynchronous, and it all depends how you use them, and you need to learn how to use them in a meaningful way. So I think there's a lot of, the strong advantage of asynchronous learning is that you can do things at your own pace. The disadvantage is that you're doing things at your own pace and you're not connecting live with someone like you are right now. So if I'm talking about anything this evening and you have a question, you can ask me. But if you watch this video and you want to ask me a question, you're going to email me, or you're going to find me on Twitter, you're going to call me or text me, and there might be a delay in the learning process. So you need to really understand between the two. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. So what are some digital learning guidelines here? And I want to quickly talk about those. So a lot of districts out there have digital media guidelines for remote learning. They've quickly created them. And if you're a parent and you have not seen them, go on the district website. If you can't find them on the district website, ask the teacher, ask the principal to look for the digital media guidelines of what you can and can't do. I'm hopefully praying that all districts, all the parents on here that have children in school have seen digital media guidelines, and maybe, hopefully, the school districts have provided parent resources for digital citizenship responsibilities. And that is kind of overviewed what digital citizenship is: using technology in a safe, meaningful way. A lot of these websites that you go on, they're asking students to give private data and information, and we've seen so much about data breaches and giving personal information. I can tell you from personal experience that someone has, it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, but someone stole my credit card number online, and that's, I mean, it's devastating. And so not only do you feel like personally scared because someone had my personal information, but broke into my bank account and things of that nature. So talking to your children about being responsible online and using technology in a meaningful way and not giving out all of your personal information. Schools are being very mindful of that, but you need to be mindful at home because it's innocent. My children, we kind of lock down their devices, but when they are on an app and they want to, there's in-game features, there's in-app features that you can sign up for. They ask you for a lot of personal information. So if I had to sit down and talk to my children about not giving out that information. So it's being mindful of that. So device use is another thing. On Common Sense Media, I put a screenshot on here. There's a guide for families on talking about device use. There's a big, awesome Q&A, and I just kind of wanted to put up a screenshot of what it looks like. But if you search Common Sense Media, you'll see that it is a tremendous resource to sit down as a family and to have these conversations with any age children. And the earlier you start, the better, because you can build that strong foundation and just become second nature as you move forward. So one of the last things I want to talk about, from setting routines to here are some resources to help. So I talked about structure a lot tonight, and learning, and I do a lot with curriculum instruction in schools, and I always talk about best practices, best learning practices inside a classroom and learning spaces. I do a lot with learning spaces, and I talk about best practices of quality teaching and learning. But at home, a lot of you aren't educators, and a lot of you, even if you have an education background, haven't had the experience. And we talked of teaching your own children and being at home, but it mirrors what we do in school. And so I just want to give you some quick pointers of what you need to look for and think about of doing at home that are long standing, way beyond getting past the pandemic and when children go back to school 5 days a week. Setting routines, and I'm sure all of you do that at home in some way, shape, or form. You know, we take a bath at a certain time, we go to bed at a certain time, we eat dinner at a certain time, you know, we do homework at a certain time, we have structure. But setting routines, if a child is still home and they're not in a hybrid or face-to-face setting yet, you know, chunking that time and keeping that structure. You know, all the research in the world will tell you children gravitate towards that structure. They're going to be more productive, and they're going to learn more if you set a routine. Creating a brief check-in system, and there's lots of templates that are out there. Common Sense Media is a great place, and I'm going to give you another website that's created by Common Sense Media to find some of these templates. But a brief check-in system, we use those a lot at the elementary level, in schools, and even at the secondary level. Not so much in higher ed because, you know, we're adult learners, but a brief check-in system with your children kind of keeps that structure and that routine, and it tracks the progress along the way. So this is the website that I've been building up, and I'm telling you, it's as good as Common Sense Media because it was created by them. But what Common Sense Media did during the pandemic is they went out and they partnered with major players in the education and ed tech space in the world. Everything from Google and Zoom, YouTube, and Comcast, and Verizon, and Apple, and Time Magazine, and XQ, if you've ever heard of them. I mean, the list is a who's who of companies, corporations that donate and give a lot of money to education or are in the education space. And it's called Wide Open School. And that is the other website that you want to bookmark as a parent, as you know, an educator. Wide Open School, I can't begin to tell you. When I saw this, they showed me the beta probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and I've seen it kind of progress when they had its big launch a couple months ago at this point. It has so many, has like too many resources for parents, but it provides you with such amazing resources, ideas, and structure on how to educate your children, whether you're fully at home, whether you want to create after school learning, whether you want to just create supplemental learning opportunities. It is amazing. It's a free collection, as I said here, of best learning experiences and activities to help families and teachers adapt to distance learning. So I don't think distance learning is going to go away anytime soon, even when we go back to a full face-to-face setting 5 days a week. Technology is here to stay. Integrating technology as a teaching and learning tool is here to stay. So understanding the types of resources that are out there, they're popping up everywhere, but the one that I really want to promote tonight is Wide Open School. It is tremendous. It goes right along with, like I said, Common Sense Media. Now you'll be able to vet different things. So check this out. This is amazing. It provides the best structure of different ideas. Take the time to read this, to navigate this site, and trust me, you won't be disappointed when you look at this. So I always like to leave you with some things to think about. Here's some resources for families. These all have hyperlinks to check out different things. This is probably hours and hours of of reading for you. So at your leisure, check these things out. It kind of overviews everything that I spoke of this evening, and anything moving forward that will help you as a parent or guardian, as an educator, to really work with kids or work with your own kids. These are some amazing resources that I've kind of curated over time, working with different people. So, any questions for me? I know I hit you with a lot in a short amount of time. I usually honestly spend either a half day or full day talking about this type of topic, but I really try to condense it into about 40 minutes to an hour. So what questions do you have for me?
I think this is incredible. Thank you. Normally we don't get tools to use, so thank you for those as well, because there's a lot of wonderful stuff here. And I've been Googling while you've been talking. There's so many good things, and you're right, you can go down rabbit holes. So I know what's probably going to happen tonight and maybe tomorrow.
And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to share. This is excellent information. I'm one of the people that said I don't have any children, but I have a whole world of children. And any opportunity that I have to learn anything that I can pass along and help people to be, more productive in whatever it is that they're doing, I'm always happy to do. I have to say, those resources, I think about, we have a lot of different socioeconomic classes. And, I sent some pictures that hopefully Jana will be able to share with the group. I have a friend whose daughter-in-law and her son are in Ohio, and the grandson is, I think, first grade, going to first grade, and the daughter is like a preschool. And so she's literally turned her house into like a school. And I sent some pictures, because it's amazing. Now I have to give her, she is an educator by trade. So she has a little bit of an edge up on others, but it's phenomenal what she did with her home, all the way down to the restroom, putting a sign on the door, putting, don't forget to flood, all the stuff that they would see in school. And so it was amazing. But again, from their perspective, they have the means, to do that type of thing. Whereas the resources that you provided, it really doesn't matter. Those resources any person could use and find something that would be helpful for them. And I appreciate that, because.
And that's why, and that's why I love them so much, because honestly, I've done so much work around equity over the years, and what the pandemic really showed, the silver lining, one of the silver linings that I found from a professional standpoint, is that so many people stepped up during the pandemic, so many companies and organizations, to really focus on equity. We've talked about equity for years and equitable situations for all learners, but it's been a lot of talking. And I'll fully admit, I've been in districts where I think I've been part of the problem. We've done a lot of talking with very little action. So this pandemic, companies and organizations really focused, and school districts really focused on creating equitable resources. The CARES Act provided money to school districts to provide internet access and technology to all learners. And look, I've worked in 4 different school districts in my career, and they've been very distinctively different. And a lot of times, I knew students were coming to school and they wanted to be in school because that was the best 7 hours of their day. And I also looked at kids that ate lunch on Friday, and it would break my heart because I knew that was the last meal they were getting until Monday morning. So, when we talk about access and equity, there's a real world out there, and especially with the pandemic. And, at one point we had 40 million people out of work. So, there's harsh realities. So when we talk about things like this, and you shared the example of your friends in Ohio, it's amazing. Even in my own neighborhood, My neighbor, his parents just moved into our neighborhood. They're the only people I know that they just retired, and you're supposed to downsize, and they upsized. They like bought like a four-bedroom house. Like, parents are nuts. But so his mom was an elementary teacher for 40 years. So she works, she has school during the day for like a bunch of neighborhood kids, and it's awesome. But think about, like, we step up in times of need. Overall, we step up in times of need, and it's heartwarming and great to see. But the reality is there's still a lot of, room for growth.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
believe me, I could talk hours about this subject, and a part of me feels like I didn't do it justice because I raced through things. But I wanted to provide you with an overarching framework and give you some quick facts and leave you with resources so you could take the time on your own, because you took time tonight to come hear me, and you're interested in this topic. So I wanted to provide you with things that are meaningful and helpful to you. And I'm glad that I'm able to pass forward any type of resource and information that I've come across. And I just thank you for spending a little time with me tonight to talk about, because I think it's a very important topic. Look, I mean, I look at our children, I look at my own children, and I think about their future. And and I realize, my parents told me that time flies when you have kids, and it's hard to believe. And it's like I blink and they just get older and older. But the harsh reality, it means I'm getting older too, and I'm like, so I gotta, I want to do everything, every opportunity I can. I want to provide the best for them. So, the most valuable commodity we have is time. So we need to maximize how we use it. And we're in an unfortunate situation, but I think the reality is, if you're not an educator, understand this, that education, the way we can, if I ask you to close your eyes right now and think about what education looks like to you, I bet, all of us are relatively in the same age range. We all picture probably a classroom with rows of desks, the teacher, students. Education is going to change. Education is going to change forever. It's going to change. It's going to change the traditional going to school at 7:30, getting out at 2:30. Like the doors have been blown wide open with online learning. And I mean, think about it. Like, think about college. I mean, for years, professors said, "Oh, you have to come to campus. You have to come to my class and sit in my lecture and learn." Well, starting in March, look at GMercyU, shut down. The university didn't shut down. We went online, and you adjust. And I can tell you right now that I teach at a university in Pittsburgh, and I teach at a university in the state of Indiana. Our graduate education program is all online, and like, we have to turn students away because, like, the quality of learning hasn't gone down. It's different. And I mean, we get students because it's more accessible to them. They don't have to, they can work, and they don't have to run the campus. They can log in online or sit in a car at a hospital and run a session. So anyway, any other questions? I want to be mindful of time here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And
see if I can share these pictures with everyone. I'll switch back here and see if I can just pull it up. So if you just give me 1 second, everybody. And this is what Charmaine was. This is not. Sorry, I want to share my screen. This is one of the photos that Charmaine sent. So this is her, I guess, friend's house, right, Charmaine? You're still here?
That's awesome.
Yes, and their last name is Bennett. So notice she has it, Bennett Elementary.
I love
That's
it.
great.
A couple of
Awesome.
others here. Sorry,
That's
Charmaine,
awesome.
here. And we'll just do one more. Sorry, Charmaine. It's part of the classroom. There are a number of others, but
Incredible.
they have a nice learning area. The restrooms are all decked out.
Yeah.
That's
She
great.
did a nice job to really, because like you said, that mental fatigue,
Yep.
and even though these children are just starting out, you know, you want to kind of give them a sense of what it really would be like. I mean, she's fortunate because the children are close in age, so she can kind of, you know, teach them both a lot of the same stuff, you know, but it's just beautiful what she did. It's really clever.
Very good.
Well, I'll share my slide deck with you, so you have it, and you know, you'll have all the resources, but check those out. I strongly recommend Common Sense Media, Wide Open Schools, and all the resources I shared, but I'll share the slide deck so you have access to all of it. But thank you all for taking the time this evening. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
I hope your
you.
family's okay also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll pray for them. And we'll put your slide deck up on the Griffins at Home page along with this video within the next 48 hours or so. So it'll be
That's great.
available then.
I'll send you an email later this evening with my slide deck.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And next week on Wednesday, October 7th at 7 o'clock, we have Zumba with Leslie Green, who is a 2016 grad.
Wow.
All right. Have a nice evening, everybody.